Good evening and welcome to the Board Directors meeting of the Bellevue School Board. At this time, we will do roll call.
Jane Aris.
Christine Chu.
Seema Sarafan.
Joyce Shuey.
Carolyn Watson is present. She's stepped away for a moment.
Eva Collins.
I will just acknowledge that we are dealing with a very new and exciting way of doing our meeting tonight. It's our first experience with a fully virtual school board meeting, so you will see us by Teams online. But we are also asking for a little bit of grace tonight because we are working with a new system. So may I ask for our student, please, to be introduced?
Good evening, directors. John Harrison, Executive Director for District and Community Affairs, and it gives me great pleasure to introduce to you tonight Mr. Jonathan Peoples, who is an 8th grade student at Tyee Middle School, and with him tonight is his mother Ashley and 3 sisters. So we're looking forward to hearing from Jonathan a little bit later.
Jonathan, welcome. I'm excited to have you lead us in the land acknowledgement. I will first lead the district in the Pledge of Allegiance, and then I will hand it off to you for the land acknowledgement, okay? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Jonathan, thank you. Could you step up and join us here and lead us in the land acknowledgement? Thank you.
There we go. Thank you. We acknowledge that we are on the land of the Coast Salish peoples, who have reserved treaty rights to this land, specifically the Duwamish and the Snoqualmie tribes. We thank these caretakers of the land who have lived and continue to live here since time immemorial. We reflect on the historical context that brings us to reside on these lands, accept responsibility to interrupt erasure. We commit to an ongoing partnership with the Snoqualmie tribe as we listen to, learn from, and lead with guidance.
Thank you, Jonathan. At this time, we'd like to just turn to some acknowledgements. May is a particularly interesting and important month for a variety of reasons. It is Asian Pacific Island Heritage Month. It is Mental Health Awareness Month. It is Military Appreciation Month. It is also National Physical Fitness and Sport Month. We thank all the members of our community who support us every day from a variety of places in life, so we thank you. We also want to acknowledge that May 1st is National Principals Day. The week of May 1st through 7th is National Physical Education and Sport Week. May 2nd was Eid al-Fitr. May 3rd through 7th is Teacher Appreciation Week. May 4th, which was yesterday, is National Teacher Appreciation Day. Today is Cinco de Mayo. May 7th is School Lunch Hero Day. Next week, May 12th, is National School Nurse Day. May 13th is School Communicators Day. And May 16th is Vesak Day. Thank you to everyone in our community who supports us every day. At this time, I ask for a second to my motion that we approve tonight's agenda. Do I have a second?
Seconded.
Is there any discussion? Director Chu?
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure, I think I spoke with you before the meeting, so I think we're okay, but I want to make sure we're all on the same page. we need a few minutes to make sure that everyone of the board directors has all that they need and is on the same page for tonight's community event where we have our listening session. So I'm just want to clarify where that will go in the agenda. I was going to expect it to be under board business, but I think you've requested to put it under the director discussion.
Correct.
Or maybe as the last item in board business or.
Right. I mean, I had suggested when we spoke that we put it in director discussion. It is not on the agenda currently, so we could add it as 5.5 if it's important to you to be under board business. Since it is a discussion, we could start it under board business and carry it over.
That sounds great.
Okay,
Thank you.
so would you like to amend the agenda
Yes,
with
I
that?
amend the agenda to have a 5.5 item for the meeting tonight's community forum.
Okay, and I second your motion as amended. If there's no further discussion, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, hearing no objections, the motion carries. At this time, we'd like to invite our student speaker back to the podium. And Jonathan, we're going to make sure that your microphone is really strong because I think we had trouble hearing you, and we'd love to hear from you now. So thank you.
Okay. There we go. Thank you. I wanted to talk about my AVID project, which was based around racial diversity in the educational system. I feel as an African American and Native American student, we don't really learn that much about my history, and so I've actually went around the school and I've interviewed a lot of people on if they knew African American historical figures versus white historical figures, and a lot of people didn't even know one of the African American historical figures, and so that let me know that I understand that you guys are doing a lot and you guys are been trying for the past couple of years to make sure that there is enough racial equality. But I feel like if we could figure out a way to where it becomes a like core curriculum that is supposed to be taught during the history classes, and if we could allow there to be African American authors and people of color who are authors into the books that we read all year round in our language arts classes, I feel like there would be more acceptance and more thought into how the students feel who are African American or don't identify as Caucasian. And so I feel that I don't really feel connected with the books that we read or some of the history that we're learning because, again, that's not my history and I don't fully understand why I'm the only one who has to learn about this and everybody else gets to learn about their history and I don't really get to learn about mine. That's pretty much all I really came here to say. I didn't really know what to say, but.
That's great. Thank you. Thank you, Jonathan. Appreciate your comments. They're well taken and very well appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
If I may, Director Schaeffer, I just want to note that Jonathan's going to be at one of our high schools next year, probably Newport, and I think it will be great to have voices like Jonathan's continue in the leadership role in that space, because that's exactly what we need to make the changes you're talking about. So thank you so much.
So thank you, Jonathan. And just so you know, a lot of the people who do oversee curriculum are right here in the room, and they heard you, and I think really appreciated your thought and your perspective. So thank you. Okay, at this time, I'm going to ask for a second to the motion I make now that we approve the consent agenda. Is there a second?
Seconded.
Okay, is there discussion? This would be the time if someone wants to remove something for the consent agenda, they would do that, and then we would, by the great guidance of our general counsel, we would remove it, move forward with the motion, and then discuss the items we remove.
I just want to call out, and I'm not asking to remove it, I just want to call out that the annual plan is on this agenda, and it has been updated, but it is the plan for next year. And I think we had a pretty extensive discussion about it at our last meeting, so I'm not asking to remove it, but I want to be like as transparent as we can that it's right there, and this is our chance to approve it or discuss it if anyone needs to, but that's that will be as part of our vote tonight.
Okay. At this time, I would ask for a vote for passing the consent agenda. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, the consent agenda passes. We just ask 30 seconds. Director Watson, could I just have you maybe mute your device? I'm just going to take 20 seconds here. All right, so we thank Director Watson. She's not feeling well, but even though she's not, she's still joining us here, which we greatly appreciate. I think at this time, we agree. It's nothing contagious, but she's a bit of a champion and she's here, so thank you. We're going to move to item 3, our superintendent update. Our superintendent, Dr. Art Jarvis, is unable to join us tonight due to some personal conflicts, and we have instead our deputy superintendent, Eva Collins. So Director Collins, Superintendent Collins, please.
Thank you. I just have a few items I want to highlight tonight, and some are informative, mostly in celebration and recognition. As Director Serafan mentioned, this is Teacher Appreciation Week, and we've commonly referred to it as Educator Appreciation Week in Bellevue. I started my career in education as a teacher. My first year, I was hired as a kindergarten teacher, and it was likely the most challenging and most rewarding professional experience in my entire life. And since that time, the profession has become even more challenging, and yet I hope equally rewarding. I'm so proud to work in a profession, and more specifically in a district where educators are genuinely committed to kids and so passionate about education. And so I just wanted to take this moment to express our immense gratitude for all educators, and in particular, our Bellevue School District educators. Secondly, I really wanted to continue the mention that you did, Director Serafan, about AAPI Heritage Month. AAPI stands for Asian American and Pacific Islander. And as an Asian American woman myself, I feel personally connected to the many events and learning opportunities that I've seen in our district and community in recognition of API heritage. So one example this week was a read-in that was organized by the librarian at Stevenson, Jennifer Ching, and this was actually even noted in the news, and she planned a read-in and had volunteers go around to each of the classrooms and read students books that were either written by or illustrated by Asian Americans. And I think this is important because what we just heard from Jonathan, our student at Tyee, was there's this significant need for our students to see themselves in the curriculum and to see not only in the books that we read, but in the history that we're learning and how that's being portrayed. And he just talked to us from the mouths of one of our students about the impact that can have on humanity. And so I think this example of this librarian doing this work is just a terrific example of that happening at the elementary level, and it's something that we want at all levels in our district. Also, I would like to highlight that there was a news article in the Seattle Times, and one of our teachers, a third grade teacher at Woodridge, Michael Friesen, was interviewed for that article, in which she talked about the Japanese internment and how people in the Bellevue community were impacted. Again, this is exactly what I think Jonathan was trying to highlight, that we need more examples of this happening in our curriculum for our students. Just a couple other things, that the Spring for Schools, the Bellevue Schools Foundation Spring for Schools is next week. And so I'm super excited about that. It is a wonderful event, and registration is still open for that if people would like to attend either virtually or in person. And then you also mentioned that May is Mental Health Awareness Month. And this is an area that's on all of our minds, especially over the past few years. And I just wanted to say how proud I am of our staff for prioritizing mental health as part of our recovery plan and putting the kinds of tools and plans in place that really help us to identify and support students. And I believe that Bellevue is a lighthouse in this area, and yet we know we still have so much more to do. So that will be something we will continue to prioritize. Finally, last couple things, the SAT, there was a question about the SAT and whether or not the district planned to continue to offer that assessment during the school day, and we do plan to continue to offer that. Dr. Jarvis wanted you to know that there's been a 3-year commitment made. We always evaluate based on, you know, changing assessments and the load of assessments and the relevancy of assessments. But we know that this is an important assessment for our students, and we will continue to offer that. And then finally, there is a policy update that was provided, and John Harrison would like to give you an update on that.
Thank you. Executive Director Harrison?
Thank you. And again, I know that directors have seen the proposal, but what I wanted to do really quickly is just kind of emphasize that this is a policy proposal for prioritization of the policy work. And in the document, I shared the criteria that I used for prioritization, and there are basically 4 points. One is that if there are legally required changes, they need to be addressed, obviously. And then those policies that were previously prioritized by the board for review, and then those policies that have been prioritized by the district's executive team. And then finally, as you all know, WASDA does updates, oftentimes driven by changes in legislation, and we've got some updates that we need to look after fairly soon. So basically what I did is prioritize the policy work into 4 phases. The first phase being between now and the end of the year. Second phase, the summer. Third phase, the first part of the fall by the end of October. And then the fourth phase, the remainder of the 22-23 school year. And basically, I think when you look at the policies, you'll see there should be some logic as to why they are prioritized the way that they were. And just in closing, I just want to address a couple of the comments and questions that were raised at Monday's session. There was a question about this being an evolving document, and that was the plan. It will be an evolving document, and as changes are made and additions are made as we move forward, obviously the document will be updated, and we'll provide those updates to you as the changes are made. So, for example, we need to determine, for the summer, first and second readings for some of the policies that are up first. The other point was an expectation of a critical criteria review and appropriate stakeholder engagement, community input prior to any first reading. I just wanted to let you all know that that is consistent with the planning that's gone into place, and furthermore, Policy 2020 requires it. So just wanted to make sure that that point is known. Also, Director Watson raised the point of that we have a chart that kind of outlines, it's sort of a guide to the level of community engagement required depending on the impact of the policy on students, staff, and community. So that chart has been used, will continue to be used, and is still as pertinent today as it was when we developed it a number of years ago. So finally, at the outset, I mentioned that this proposal is a prioritization proposal. In the next week or so, my plan is to develop a process that will speak to issues like the sharing of draft revisions prior to first reading, as well as stakeholder engagement plans, et cetera, with the board in advance of first readings. And the whole point there is to ensure that we have an efficient reading and adoption process in place. So, thank you.
Thank you. I do have a question because I recalled a version that you shared earlier that only had that had about 4 policies, but they were all going to be coming up before June 1st, June 2nd. But I see only 1 now, and I'm just not clear about that because I thought we would see 4 based on your prior communication at the last board meeting. Yeah, and I don't see also the high quality instruction policy on here at all.
And just I can clarify that really quickly. there was an original draft that was not in the draft that you saw on Monday, and primarily because of the concerns raised around capacity to get that work done between now and June, given that after tonight, there's 3 meetings remaining. So the one policy that was prioritized to be completed between now and June is the one that legally we need to have in place, and we're out of compliance. And then the other 4 we could get to in the summer was the thinking. So you're right that an initial draft had 4 or 5, and now it changed to 1, just given the time that we have left.
Seema, the other thing that I'd call out is I believe that the high quality instruction is part of the instructional framework policy, which is listed in that summer section right now.
That's
but I have a
helpful because
question when you're
I
ready.
didn't, I couldn't tell if that was the intent or not. So, so just so I'm clear, are the ones that have been moved to where it says by end of August, is that essentially what we previously thought was coming June 2nd and 9th? Or
Yes.
I just want to
initially-
make sure I'm tracking truly, because I thought I was, and I think I see changes that are confusing to me. So I just want to make sure I understand. So what now says end of August was originally going to be June 2nd and 9th. And I did comment to you that I thought I didn't see how we could do a first and second reading in a week. But I just want to know what is under now summer phase 2. Some of that or all of that, was that previously the part that was going to come sooner? Is that correct?
Absolutely correct. And
Okay.
that feedback that you gave about being a tad overly ambitious was really good.
Well, I was actually thinking maybe front loading, like I thought maybe bring a first reading May 19 and a second reading June 2nd. I wasn't necessarily saying go out to the summer. So I didn't know if you could accelerate. I wasn't suggesting push out, but I see from your explanation that you're saying it's not possible.
Right. And I would just say that some of those policies need some additional work. So to have a little bit of time to make sure that they're ready for first reading and you get information in advance of first reading, that's what I'm proposing.
Okay, I think there's other director questions. Director Chu?
I have 2 thoughts just on this policy plan. One is that I see the grading and progress reporting, which I'm anxious to see some movement on, and that's exciting. But I also, when we heard our grading report, one of the things that we heard in that report was that we needed to bring the community and the stakeholders with us. And so I am wondering about what it means to try to get that through over the summer when our stakeholders aren't really around. And so, and I'm not sure that a policy like that is going to bring everyone along if we tried to do it before the end of the school year at this point. So I'm just wondering how those 2 things are reconciled, what was presented to us in the report and what's on here. And then the second thing I want to note is I don't see much on harassment, intimidation, and bullying, or misconduct. And I know there's a lot of work being done in response to what our students have brought forth all year long about the importance of taking care of victims of sexual assault and harassment. And I wondered if we needed to have a sort of tracking item on here that if the work that's being done there with the students and others may result in any policy updates, would we add that, or did you look at that and say, you know what, we just need to do procedural updates, so we should be okay? And I just wanted to know how that fit in.
Yeah, both fair questions, and I'm just cognizant of the time. This is 50 minutes in this agenda, so we will update the information here to address the issues raised tonight. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. I think we should bring the question of the policy question back on the 19th of May, please, on Director Chu's question on HIB. So, yeah. Why don't I have you confirm what you want, and then we'll make sure we're on the same page for what comes back on the 19th.
And then I also didn't hear any confirmation of some of the things that were raised by Director Aris, and I was actually quite enticed by those. Were you going to speak to that? Then I'll just be quiet. I did ask on Monday regarding adding new policy possibilities of around inclusion. Is that still feasible to work that in?
Yeah, I'm going to answer that question because it's part of the point of an evolving document. That issue was raised on Monday, obviously, and around additional policies. So again, this is an evolving document as we move forward.
All right.
So I just think so that we are all on the same page. Director Chu raised 2 policies, and I think the ask is, can you give us an update on where and how those fit in by May 19th? With respect to Director Aris's, which she brought up in our pre-board discussion on Monday of this week, when do you think would be a reasonable update? Would that be May 19th? Okay, so then all 3 would be addressed May 19th. Is that fair? Okay. Okay, all right, good.
And can I just say, I actually really appreciate having this document and seeing it get updated. It makes for a much more transparent conversation. Thank you for the work that went into it.
Great. I think at this time, Deputy Superintendent Collins, you've already addressed what was item 3.2. So I think at this time we're ready for public comment. Our directors, yes, we're all ready for that. So can I ask Ms. Patterson if you could let me know how many people we have?
It's Miss Worth that now who's handling that. Oh,
Ms. Hannah Worth, how many people do we have for public comment tonight? I know we have a different system. And by the way, we thank our Director Shuey for pushing us towards this system. We're trying it out. It will be a mix, I think, of virtual and in-person. So we have then 6. No, is it, we've got 7 people. So I will take lead from you on you and Director Harrison on who's going to go first and how you'll do it. I think we are all going to be experiencing this new way of public comment together. So thank you.
yes, thank you. It looks like our virtual commenters are either not logged on or have not logged on with the names that they've given us. So
Okay.
I will say if you're online and you signed up to comment virtually, please change your display name.
Before we enable people to speak, I will ask anybody who's speaking to please be mindful of what is written in our public notice. It's information about our public comments. We ask you to each read it carefully and know that we expect you as a member of our community to adhere to it. It's particularly important with online public comment. We're grateful that you are participating as members of our community in our public comment. Those of you who've come in person or joined us virtually, we appreciate and invite your public comment. You do need to know that we need to adhere to the laws around defamation, as well as content that is inappropriate over the communication system. So we ask that you please remain as civil and appropriate as possible, but we do want to hear your honest feedback. So with that, we ask you to please read the entire information guidelines in our public comment. So Ms. Worth, who is our first person?
I'd like to have our in-person folks go first. Joel Ingraham is our first in-person commenter.
I'm not sure if your mic is working, Ms. Worth, so you may want to just double check it. So to those speaking, just a reminder that you have 2 minutes, and to please keep in mind that if you go over your time, you are taking time away. So please just be mindful of that. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Joel Ingraham, and I'd like to talk tonight about literacy. There was a number of articles this week in the Seattle Times, one about the work of Letters and Mercer Island. I am thrilled that Bellevue is rolling out Letters as well. There were 80 educators who are volunteering to be in the first cohort. There was also another article on Wenatchee, and then the Seattle Times editorial board went big, and they called for the state to go beyond the K2 literacy new law that was targeted on intervention and dyslexia, and they called for instruction across the board to be focused on structured literacy and the science of reading. So this is tremendous progress, and it's exciting for students, but there's something that I'd like to ask of this board tonight, and that is to call on our state legislatures and make a legislative priority for funding. If the state is going to mandate that there's teacher training, and that there's structured literacy, let's have the state pay for it. Back on January 7th, Chris Reichdahl, the OSPI Washington State Superintendent, indicated that most likely in the next 6 to 12 months, they'll be going back to the legislature for funding. It would be awesome to partner with this board, with the Washington State PTA, where we're all calling for the same thing. Let's fund it, and let's make sure that the schools have the resources they need, so we don't have to ask ourselves how we're going to fund the next round of teacher training. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Christy Swessinger. Thank you.
My name is Christy Swessinger, and I have 2 students in the district. May is Mental Health Awareness Month, and I'd like to share our personal story and a few statistics between dyslexia and mental health. The noticeable decline in my daughter's mental health in 2nd grade was what brought me into this advocacy work. I did not want another family to watch their child go from loving school to coming home feeling dumb or like a failure. She spent most of her 3rd grade year in remote learning with her camera off because she wanted to disappear. Those were her words. She was terrified of being called on for fear of admitting to her peers that she could not read. Now that she has gone through 2 years of private structured literacy program, she is thriving in her 4th grade class. Research estimates that as many as 20% of children with dyslexia also suffer from depression, and another 20% from an anxiety disorder. In addition, dyslexic students may experience lower self-esteem, higher levels of loneliness, at greater risk for substance abuse, and at greater risk for juvenile delinquency. Dyslexic students are at a higher risk for intense feelings of sorrow and pain that can lead to depression. The depressed dyslexic not only feels great pain in their current experiences, but also foresees a life of continuing failure. Anxiety is a normal human response to situations of stress. It is a flight or fight response to a fearful situation. Students with dyslexia are under a great deal of stress as they must face daily tasks that they find extremely difficult. With anxiety, it is common to avoid the situation as a protective response, and avoidance behavior can be interpreted as laziness or misbehavior. Children can be very good at hiding their mental health issues and may be suffering to a greater extent than we realize. Mental health problems may be exhibited in coping mechanisms such as anger, obsessive behavior, defiant behavior, and avoidance behavior. I hope BSD continues to address mental health issues across all our schools. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. We invite our next speakers. I understand it is Valerie Makem and Olisa Melnichenko.
And directors, just to clarify, under our new public comment system, given the changes in the way it's being handled, individuals are still given their 2-minute time, and if they wish to cede any portion of their time to anyone else, including somebody who has already provided public testimony, they can, but they're going to be timed individually rather than as a group, which was done in the past.
Okay, so you have 2 minutes together.
They each have 2 minutes, and if the second speaker wishes to cede any portion of the 2 minutes back to the other speaker after she has started, she can do so. Correct. 4 minutes together. Go.
Okay. Hello, my name is Olesa Melnichenko. I was on math adoption committee for the last 2 years for grades from K to 5th. And I have a student in Bellevue School District and elementary school. So I would like to share some observations they made based on conversations with friends and families who has elementary kids and from adoption committee work as well. So first observation is that parents, elementary school parents especially, they experience lack of communication, information, and access to the learning resources and students' assessments results. So many parents, they do not understand skills progression through years of elementary school. They do not understand what's the goals and expected outcomes for this particular year. They do not understand what their kids doing at school, what they're working on, and what progress they have. like few materials brought from school back. So when I ask parents, like, give me your response, what do you feel about new curriculum? They were like, we have no response because we have no idea what's going on. So the second observation is related to curriculum. And the good thing about curriculum as the focus of the curriculum is concept understanding, but there are a couple of concerns related to curriculum as well. So first one is, do we have enough practice? Do students have enough practice to develop skills and fluency? The second one is, do we have enough support for non-average students? Especially there were complaints about students who are above grade level, who feels bored, and about students who need help with language. Like one of the complaints is new curriculum is language heavy. So students expected to talk a lot, and students who English language learners or who has some issues with language, they have issues with math now. And last item on my list is about teachers and their feelings about curriculum. So in some schools, about 50% of teachers responded to a survey did not support the adoption of the curriculum. So the question is why? Don't they like the approach? Don't they like the materials provided by the provider of the curriculum? So we need to figure that out and understand how to help teachers. And the other thing is, do teachers have enough self-assessment tools to understand where they're successful in teaching this curriculum or not? So here I stop and give the word to Valerie.
So I wanted to first it was my fortune to meet Alessia because she not only was on the adoption committee, but she is, I hope you don't mind me sharing, but she teaches in, enrichment courses here in Bellevue. So she's seeing our Bellevue kids, in outside math classes to see how they are doing math. And she is very well versed in math. And so these are parents that, in this document, I have some asks for what we can do. These are parents that we need to have feedback from. They not only know the discipline very well, they teach it, not in our district, but through other enrichment programs, and they really care. So I just wanted to give a shout out, and I'm very fortunate to have met her in this last few weeks. But so I've sat down with Paul Connolly and many parents. I think parents from every single middle school and high school, pretty much everyone. So this is a compilation of insights, and I'm going to cover K-12. I have a 4th grader and an 8th grader, and it's been interesting because seeing my 8th grader and 4th grader and how they've learned math and where my 8th grader has become very worrisome. I essentially have very similar problems. I can talk to them, and I see my 4th grader able to think through problem solving that my 8th grader should be doing. And so it just made me kind of dig deeper into what's going on. So talking to a lot of parents, we've sort of seen a couple of things happening. One is the lack of physical textbooks. So the richness of textbooks, detailed problems and solutions are really missing, especially in K-12. It's accessible to parents. It's accessible to the kids. Navigating a child's PC in OneNote, I mean, it's like akin to finding that missing sock out of the laundry. And so it's not feasible to understand what's happening. And I think Alessia mentioned the need for better communication on what's happening in math. It's also much more difficult digitally. And then as I watch my children doing math on a digital white space, they're very limited with the real estate. They have this much to do a problem, and it's okay, but there's been so much foundation set to show work that I think it just goes away when they're constrained on a digital workspace. And so, I've told my 8th grader we're going to be writing notes, and he's probably the only one in his 8th grade class that writes notes on paper. But in that last month, his confidence has just increased. Us being able to engage and converse about what he's doing, because I have this paper, has been so huge for me, and I've seen it in him. So that's the other thing about paper-based work. And so there was a study, and I referenced it in the doc, between Princeton and UCLA that talked about physical note-taking and correlating to better retention, synthesis capabilities, and conceptual comprehension. So I think it's really important. I put in some really interesting data sets that I found around the use of a device and some outcomes that this particular study looked at. And I just would look at it. I think we're in a very important time to look at tech usage and have we hit the right place where it's either helping drive learning and progression or is hindering? Do we know? I'm not sure. And so one of the asks that you'll see on some of the pages is to get to a tech usage adoption and to understand if this is helping our kids or not. So, you know, the other big issue in K-12, and I think this has probably been on the radar, has been around consistency of grading and pacing within classes. So a single school can have, let's say, 3 Algebra 2 classes. 2 of the classes will have 50 to 60% failing rates. And the other class, the third class, will have 90% A's and B's. I mean, this needs to be addressed at a principal level. Like, what is going on? That is statistically not possible. And so, you know, these kids.
I just need to remind you of time, please.
Okay, are we done? Okay. Well, I don't want to
just take a few seconds to finish.
too much time. I think the ask, let me just get to the ask. Textbooks for all grades or access to a textbook. Technology usage study in first half next year with some recommendations from that study to be implemented. I want to really understand if teachers are liking the always on in middle school and above with a laptop. You know, can they see their kids? Social facial cues of engagement. Do they know what's happening behind the screen? Let's really question this stuff. And then stronger communications. I think Alessia talked about it. And then let's partner with our parents. Like, I mean, she is the perfect person to have in our classrooms to give feedback. Paul did invite me to Bellevue High to go check out a math class, and so I'm happy to do that, but I don't know if I'm the right person. But there's so many parents that can give
I'm
some
sorry.
great feedback. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I think we just need to be, this is our first time doing this. We just got to be a little more careful on the front end because I think we probably calculated that time a little bit off. So we will now move on to our virtual speakers.
We have Mark Schweschinger up first. And Mark, if you can unmute yourself, please, and turn your camera on.
I've unmuted the camera. Hold on. It just enabled it. There we go. Hello. Can everyone hear me?
Yes,
Okay,
we
great.
hear you.
So my name is Mark Swessinger, and I have 2 students in the district, including a 4th grader who has dyslexia. I'd like to start by congratulating the district on improving letters training for teachers as a great step forward for providing structured literacy support for students in the district. It's a great start, but our kids need more support. I know large organizations have many priorities, conflicting interests they must balance. There's often resistance to change and big ships move slowly. So while I see structured literacy as a universal design problem, I also understand it may be new for some people in the district. I'd like to plant the seed with the board to think about the idea of creating some classrooms that are tailored to support dyslexic students who could really benefit from a classroom tailored to their way of learning. The district already has a precedence with the advanced learning program at my daughter's school, which pulls a subset of kids to receive a tailored curriculum. The district also has 2 immersion language schools and 3 dual language programs across elementary schools. These are all amazing opportunities that we provide for children in the district. But when I think about this, it really makes me wonder why we couldn't provide a class or a school that tailors its lessons to the 1 in 5 kids that have dyslexia. Across BSD, this number is estimated at 3,800 students that have dyslexia. Public schools in New York State have a public dyslexia school as a choice program. This is an amazing opportunity for those students and an example we can learn from. I cannot think of a more important learning priority for the district than ensuring every child has the best chance to learn to read and write to their full potential. Thank you.
Thank you. I think next we have Tanya, is that right?
Tanya, if you are online, please unmute yourself and let us know that you're there.
I'm not sure that folks who are not elevated can unmute themselves. But if she is on, if she can change her name to help us.
Thank you, Joyce. Jess has made it so that our guests can unmute themselves when it's their turn. Thank you. Okay, so last on our list is Lucinda Campbell. And if you are online, please unmute yourself and let us know.
Okay, how about if we, do we have either of them showing up in, okay, so they don't appear to be here.
That's
All
right.
right. Okay, if there is no one who was a walk-in who was kind of a provisional person, then I suggest we move forward. If you get contacted by some point and we're able to, we will go back to them. This is our first run at this and it went pretty well, but we will keep working at it. So thank you to all of those who came tonight for public comment. Just 1 second. Okay, we turn now to board business. Item 5.1 is a motion. It's requiring board action. It's on the instructional materials related to math. These were discussed briefly on Monday, but I will just start by saying I am comfortable making a motion to pass the request of the district to approve these instructional materials based on the committee recommendation for math. If I have a second, we can go to any discussion. Is there a second?
I'll
Is there a
second it.
purpose, okay, of discussion? All right, there is a second. If board directors like to discuss, and Jess, you can remove the counter, the timer, please.
Directors, before you begin your discussion, I do want to add one commentary that this is an unusual form of action because the Washington law and curriculum adoption is very specific, that the board can either accept or reject the recommendations of an instructional materials committee. And so that's why it's a little bit different than your typical motion, because the board only has the ability to accept or reject a curriculum recommendation from an instructional materials committee.
So your point is no modification?
That would be correct.
Correct, okay. So is there discussion in light of that clarification or just as to the general materials? We do have Deputy Superintendent Collins here. I think what I don't know from the district is if there is a time-sensitive element to this. Okay, all right. So I think Director Chu had something.
Yeah, I wanted to ask the question that I'm not sure if I read about it in the materials or not, but there were some things that were in the critical criteria piece that we got on Monday, and also that where it came up in some of the comments today. What is the feeling about the applicability of this to English language learners? What sort of materials are there? And what made you feel comfortable making this recommendation for all students? It is for all students, right? It's not a specialized program, right? It's our core curriculum. So I just wanted to just get some comfort there around that. I see some of it in the documentation, but I'd like to just hear about it from someone.
So Deputy Superintendent Collins, I don't know if you were, we did not have much discussion on this on Monday, and part of that was because we initially got, I think, this draft on April 11th. And when we were doing our meeting on Monday for our pre-read, it had not actually been, as I recall, posted. It was posted just as we were speaking. So there really wasn't a chance to have, meaning I think for some directors, there was a recollection of having reviewed it previously. We didn't have enough time in the moment to really look at it.
Okay.
So I see that it's drafted by Eric Ferguson. I don't know if there's, in light of some of the changes that happened this week, I don't know if there's preparation to take on Director Chu's question, but I think it's something that could be worthy of fleshing out tonight, or if you don't have someone, we can bring it back.
I wasn't in attendance at the Monday meeting, so I didn't realize that it was such a short conversation. And remember that we had the math team come and do a pretty significant presentation and workshop with the board earlier. And so if there are additional questions that are coming up tonight, what we can do is note them and get back. And you can decide not to make a decision tonight if the information that you have in front of you and the information you've received previously isn't sufficient to make a decision, then that's fine. We can delay it to the next meeting and certainly do a better job of making sure that we get you the information for the Monday conversation.
I think we may want to see from other board directors what they think. I did feel that our discussion was pretty foundational. So I not on Monday, but the prior one with the math team. So, but I don't know if others have a different view. So Director Watson was about to speak.
Well, I was just saying, I've been hunting and hunting for the math critical criteria, which I know you sent, but I can't find it anywhere. So
it says additional materials and it's
my
highlighted.
goodness, yeah.
And that's where it goes.
Okay. All right, there it is.
So maybe we just have each director weigh in on how they're feeling, because I think we have one board director who'd like, I think, more time for questions. I don't know how other board directors feel. It'd be good to have that understanding.
I would like a little bit more time to read all of the very detailed document, if that's okay.
Director Shuey? I think a question would, maybe there's two questions. One is, do we wish to have this carried forward to the meeting on May 19th? That's the first question. The second might be, so that we don't arrive at May 16th, which is our pre-read, and have less time between that meeting, that discussion, and May 19th. Can we maybe list out the questions now, and then the district would know if, for example, on the 19th, on the 16th, as well as the 19th, we would just want more sort of maybe material or review time. So maybe we can have each director, if there's a specific question that they have, share that. If it's more just time to develop those, that's good too. Director Chu, I think you articulated your question, but maybe so that Deputy Superintendent Collins can get it down, you can maybe just restate
that'd be
it.
great. As I go through the critical criteria review again and listening to the comments tonight, it kind of had me synthesize things a little differently. And so I have this question that I didn't have when I reviewed this initially. And it's really around, I see here that it says, oh, we want the parents might have trouble helping because it's not aligned to conceptual, that they didn't necessarily learn math with a conceptual bent. But the question that I have is, I don't see a risk or a barrier here about the approach to instruction and the materials themselves being text heavy. And so I wondered, was that actually not a risk? Is that, that maybe one or two people's perception, but was that overall not found to be a risk? And if it was a risk, what did we learn about it? How did we mitigate it? Are we providing different materials? In particular for students who are learning English, but as we've found out, we have so many students, who are struggling with reading and writing in different ways and for different reasons. And so we don't want to shut off math as an avenue where they maybe are able to engage differently if we suddenly make that too text dependent. So I just wanted to understand that. I also see here that we are putting this forth because we don't have another option. Our other curriculum is finishing up, right? It's ending. So yeah, I just want to make sure that there's some plans and mitigations if that is indeed an issue. Is that clear enough? Seema, is that what you wanted?
Yes, I think it's going to be clear now for Deputy Superintendent Collins, and then we can then have something communicated before, so that we are in better shape for the 19th.
And the other question that I had raised on Monday when I had looked at this when we got it during the meeting was just the extent of stakeholder engagement. So we don't have a whole bunch of people at this meeting. We don't have people lining out the door to tell us this is great or this is terrible. And I know there is a process and people are usually able to give comments and so forth. Just wondering what the stakeholder engagement looked like with regard to the risks identified, not just in light of and all the things that the actions we took, but with respect specifically to the risks and that were being mitigated. And that's it.
So, I guess I am in general kindly disposed to this illustrative mathematics. I've seen some of it, up close. But I think that one of the things that really struck me was this notion of not having any parents not really knowing how to support their kids because they don't have, like a physical textbook. It's mostly online or something to kind of get to and easily hold on to. And we have here under risk mitigation, under families, provide families with easily accessible resources and supports. It might look like online practice and one-page documents or flyers that would provide the grade level standards and the examples of the math. I think that if we had that, like an outline of where we're going in this class that goes home to parents and something you can hold on to. I hate to say this in light of our our initiative to use less paper, but just something that parents can use at the kitchen table to kind of help their kids with math might go a long way towards resolving something that was noted in this critical criteria and something that was noted in the public comments.
Did you have something else, Carolyn? Oh,
No,
okay.
I was just saying, reinforcing that risk mitigation thing on this critical criteria as being important.
Okay. All right. I think with that, we will move what is item 5.1 over to our agenda, board business agenda for the 19th.
I do just want to make a comment looking at the document. I'm sorry, I have too many tabs open. I do appreciate the outline of all the things that they have considered, the critical writing at the critical criteria, as well as dyscalculia and illustrative mathematics, and really looking at the universal design learning component. I very much appreciate that. You guys are very thorough. I appreciate it. Thank you.
If there's nothing further.
Yeah, I was just going to say, this is one of the best critical criteria documents I've seen thus far. Just wanted to say, so detailed.
Okay, so at this time, I move for item 5.1 to be, if I have a second to this, to be carried to a date certain, which would be May 19th. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, so all those in favor, please say aye.
Before we vote, I just want to confirm there's no issue that does not present any issues to the district
No, she
whatsoever.
said there didn't.
Okay.
I'd asked earlier if there was a time sensitivity. So do I have yeah, all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so motion carries. We'll move this to the 19th of May. So I think we move to items 5.2 and 5.3, which I think are related. And if I'm correct, are those motions that are coming from either a specific director or?
I think it has to come from a director who voted to approve it in the first place. So
correct. So the December 16th, 2021 board meeting minutes were subsequently approved at the second board meeting in December of 2021. Director Chu identified concerns about the accuracy of those notes. We've determined that there were concerns about those notes not necessarily being accurate. And so the process by which the board is being asked to first have a board member who voted in favor of the approving those minutes do a motion for reconsideration, and then the second would be to have a substitute motion for the approval of revised meeting minutes. So it's a two-step process since the board previously approved the prior meeting minutes on a consent agenda in December.
I think we can do this pretty quick. I'm going to go ahead and make the motion for reconsideration of the approval of the consent agenda of the minutes in the consent agenda from December 16th, 2021 for the December 2nd, 2021 regular business meeting minutes. And that's my motion. And
I'll second the motion.
Thank you. And I just want to say, as we go through this, I did a quick kind of fix on things, and then the district looked at it, and the whole legal team reviewed it and got some feedback and said, oh, I don't know if this is quite right. Wait a second, so that they like went through the entire thing and fixed it. So this is presented by the legal team at the district, the second piece that we're about to see. But we have to first vote to reconsider.
Okay, so motion having been made and seconded, unless there's discussion, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. So the motion carries. We now go to item 5.3. Is there a motion?
I motion that we approve the the revised meeting minutes that are presented here in the board meeting materials for December 2nd, 2021 regular business meeting.
I second. Is there discussion? Okay, hearing none.
I just want to thank Directors Watson, Chu, and Shui for helping me get all those meeting minutes accurate and corrected, and appreciate the assistance of the board in getting this done properly.
Thank you. Thank you. We thank you back because you've been very helpful to us in navigating minutes. So I think the motion having been made and seconded and hearing no discussion, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, the motion carries. We now move to item 5.4, a superintendent search update. I think we can all comment, but basically we're here just to tell the community that we have picked a search firm. We were very excited about our selection. It's a company called Human Capital Enterprise. They came very highly recommended. We did, I think, a really thorough job of examining 7 very strong proposals, and we were very pleased with the choices, all strong, and able to pick something particularly strong out of those. So we're looking forward to working with their leaders, who are Hank Harris and Steve Webb. We will be talking to them this coming Monday for a planning meeting. And we're looking forward, I think, on the suggestion that Vice President Watson made as to having them maybe introduce themselves by video in a future meeting. We might be looking to do that on May 19th. So with that, if anybody has any comments, happy to take them. If not, we're also happy to move on to item 5.5, which is going to be about our community engagement, engagement forums and our first session tonight. So let me just first ask, anything related to the superintendent search firm update?
No, just for transparency, I think we have another work session coming up on Monday with them?
Yeah, May 9th. Yeah, I had mentioned that, but I didn't say
Sorry.
Monday. So yeah, May 9th. So yeah, it's already, it's being posted, and it will be from 3 to 5:30, and it's going to be a working session. So item 5.5, I think Director Chu and Aris. It was added to the agenda. It just doesn't show up just yet. There was when we approved the agenda, Director Chu made a motion. We are adding that, and we're planning to just frankly speak about it and then move into director discussion and carry forward just a broader discussion. So why don't I have Directors Aris and Chu speak to this?
All right, so the purpose of the item here in this section is really to make sure that all 5 of us are on the same page and ready to go tonight for our community discussion that we're going to have. And staff have done a tremendous amount of work to prepare for this for us tonight. We have some process issues to work out, and we can talk about that later in the director discussion pieces, but we have lots of great materials available. But in short, what we're going to do tonight is when we start our forums, there is a discussion guide, but each of us will be taking on one table of participants. Director Shui and Director Watson will take an online virtual table of participants each, and each of the rest of us will take a table, I think in this room, is that correct? So we'll each be at a table in this room, and we'll have a group that we discuss things with. We put together some discussion questions, and we didn't get a chance to iterate too much with you on that, and we apologize, but the essence was we didn't want to we'd started to propose asking similar questions to what we've asked in the past. And some of the feedback we got from our community was, hey, you keep asking us, where are you going with this? So can you please give us some questions that reflect that you're hearing what we're saying? And so we had hoped to really adapt the questions based not only on what we've asked before, but also on the content of some of the survey results that we've gotten and so forth. Unfortunately, we didn't get into that level of depth, but what we did get to was the ability to take the many questions we've been asking them in different surveys and so forth, and try to find some questions that were a little more unique, but also that geared us to the two things that we're really driving at right now. We are driving towards our superintendent search and a much deeper dive into defining in our district what it means to support our students to become creators of their future world. And so the two questions that we're asking are inviting people to go into that space and tell us, but we also wanted to keep in mind the lessons we've learned about the best deep discussions to have with people is to keep things personal and immediate and lost the other word. I thought I had it back. Anyway, but personal and immediate. So rather than say like, what do you think we should do about this? We wanted to say like, what are your experiences that would guide the answer to this question? And Director Shui did take the time to review the questions and give feedback. And she insightfully said, don't forget the catch-all question. Don't forget the opportunity for people to say, is there something else we should have asked you? Is there something you want to contribute to? So we've added that. We've left it to each group as to how you want to facilitate. Do you want to have your group go around the table virtually or in person and answer question 1 and then go to question 2? Or do you want to say, here are the 2 or 3 questions we've got out here, take your turn and answer whichever one you want. And then if there's time, you can answer another one. So we've tried to leave it flexible so that you can facilitate the way that you want. Melanie and her team, the district team, have done a lot of work to provide us with 10 staff members who are going to support this work. Like there will be 10 staff members supporting this, and there will be 2 in each of our sessions. One of them will take notes so that we have some meaningful notes to share with each other later, and that will be public information. And the other will be there to help with facilitation. So you can ask them to facilitate completely if you want. You can ask them to just be timekeeper. You can, whatever help you want, however you think you'll run the most effective discussion, then you use them. But we didn't want to prescribe that because we wanted each group to work out. Am I missing any? Let me just see if there's any other details, and then we'll take any questions and feedback. And so the other detail is that Melanie has said that she would provide us, she would work with Hannah to provide us printed copies of the facilitation guide if it would be useful to us, but she's waiting to do that until, if there are any comments tonight that change the questions or anything else, like Joyce, if we didn't quite get your edits, because I know you made 2 rounds of edits and some in, some out. So if there's anything else that we want to put on the table, we'll fix it. And then anyone who wants a hard copy, except for Joyce, you're on your own to print. Yeah, that can be done. And just a much appreciation to the team for all the work they did to set this up. So any questions? And then if you want to go to substantive feedback, we can do that too.
Let me see. Director Shui, do you have any questions?
Sorry, hard. And I am. Is that?
I think you're breaking up a bit.
My side.
Yeah, I think you might be breaking up. So I'm going to suggest we go to Director Watson, and then that gives you a little bit of time to sort that out. I know that can be challenging. Director Watson, did you have any questions?
No, but I'm in for.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I started to think of a question, but I think you answered it in the course of it, because the questions that we're supposed to ask tonight will either be, we'll either have them transmitted or they'll be printed out. So we'll know what questions to ask. And I was happy to hear that there'll be a staff member with us. So I think that's great. I think I'm excited thank you guys, both of you, for setting this up with staff. And I agree with you. It's great support that we got. And I also think that the turnout, from what I understand, we're expecting is really good for this time of year, which I think is a time when a lot of people are focused on finishing the year. So I commend you for being able to get this great turnout. And so thank you.
I think the commending goes in large part to three people, or well, one is not a person, it's our communications department, Janine and her team, but also then to Director Aris and Director Shui, who I think did the most extensive promoting through their networks. We still have to figure out how to ensure that our promotion of events is as equitable and inclusive and is really driving the right folks to come forward, but we will have another opportunity. That is the other detail I want to bring up. This is not an immediate need, but we should bring it up now. I believe that we're converging on a date of June 1st. It's a Wednesday evening, and I think it is 5:30 to 7. Okay, for the event where we're gonna take a lot of our affinity groups of folks who maybe as a community group, there are probably plenty of individuals who participate, but in terms of like large community voice and group, we're going to invite them to a session, representatives from each of the groups to come and talk to us as a collective. But prior to that, hopefully by Monday, we'll be sending them questions in advance. They'll be able to talk to their communities, keeping in mind that almost everyone in our community belongs to many sub-communities. So no one is just a singular characteristic, but there are groups that support all different characteristics of our identities in our community, and we're going to go out to those folks and we're going to ask them to come and represent some of the specific needs that those communities have, and we're going to have that conversation. So we need to confirm that June 1st date. So you may hear from Hannah or Melanie just to make sure that that's going to work for you. But right now, that was based on the data that came back. I don't know if anyone has since scheduled into it. So we'll check that, and that will be the next large group forum. Everything else will be some small groups. And I want to note that I talked to Yasmina and Shannon earlier today about they've made a very conscious effort to do something we haven't done before, and that's to make sure that all of our board events are showing up in the board calendar. So that includes these small listening sessions, and Shannon's going to give us some text to put in there to make sure it's clear to people that some of these listening sessions are very small group. They're not open public meetings. You have to register and you can come, and there'll be just 2 board members there. So we just want to make sure that the list differentiates, but they are all listed and people can sign up for them still. So we'll be continuing to promote those. Jane, what else? Yeah, I
Okay,
think.
I'm going to suggest we consider us starting director's discussion. So that clock is ticking, but I think we can smoothly go through to director discussion and just keep talking about this. Director Shui?
Yep, my comment relates to, I am still echoing, sorry about that. It does relate to the community engagement discussions, and so we can slide right in and I'll just continue over there.
Okay, we're ready for you to jump in. I think we can just keep this discussion going on community engagement. I think the update's been given. It's great. And now we can talk about more. We can talk about, look back. We can talk about look forward. Because we're talking about potentially planning things. So yeah. Director Shui, did you want to, I think your video might be frozen up, but we can see, we can definitely hear you.
Video, hoping that it might help with the speed. Is the audio okay now?
Yes, it's great.
Okay, awesome, thanks. I'll keep it off at least until I'm finished speaking. So thank you so much, Director Aris, Director Chu, and to all the staff for all the work that's gone into this. I'm so super excited about this evening. My comment is a really minor one, but it's also really substantive in the sense that it's important that we make it accessible as possible. And one of the things I'll do during my session, and I'll ask everybody to do, is just announce that subtitles can be turned on in Teams. And so if you click on the 3 ellipses there, and you can you can't do it from our end, each of the participants on their end. So if it would help them for any reason to have the subtitles turned on, they can click on the 3 ellipses, and then there is a activate subtitles. I will in my session as well be testing out something new, which is in PowerPoint. You can translate, so you can identify your language that's being spoken and the language of translation. And so I will in my session have English be the spoken language and have Spanish be turned on in the subtitles. And there is, of course, it's machine translated, but at least it provides, you know, another opportunity for people to read in another language. We do in at least some of the sessions also have translators that are live people translators. So thank you so much for arranging that. And we will be excited to see how this goes. And whatever learnings we have from tonight, we will bring forward into the future sessions. Thanks.
Thank you for following up on that, and thanks for coming up with those creative ways to get things going. I don't think we'll be able to do the same thing here in the in-room groups, because I don't think you could make the mic work to do the translation on spot with 3 groups in the same room. But I think that we have used the registration to identify what services would be needed, and those will be provided. Yeah, so that's, and as you pointed out last time, Joyce, that's probably not as sufficient as we want for that, like, to really make this robust enough, but it was what we could come up with for tonight. But I appreciate that you're going to push that envelope for us, and hopefully we can use that, because we've got 2 weeks before the next session, or almost 2 weeks. So thank you.
So I'm just going to ask that we advance the slide. It should be item 6, and we can correct slide 5 later. I think it was incorrectly saying it was 40 minutes. Okay, so we are into director discussion. I think I recall Director Chu had wanted to talk about some sort of process stuff regarding. I thought you were asking previously about just talking about how things went and look back and comparing workloads. Is this what you would like to talk about now, or do you want to move to other things?
I would, but I also recognize that I'm not shy about taking the floor, and this time is important to everyone. So I think I'd be happy for others to say their piece and say it at the end if there's time.
Sure. Director Aris, Watson, Shui, is there something you'd like to discuss now?
Sure, I would like to share the special ed PTSA that meeting that I attended the other night. The topic was inclusion as well as re-election. One of my takeaways from that meeting is the need or lack of confidence that parents have regarding their students being fully included, and what does that inclusion means. And I appreciate our school district working diligently and creating that accessibility, but it did make me ponder, can we do more and how? And I reflected on the fact that if you're going through teacher training for general education teachers, they're only mandated 1 class in special ed, and typically it's the foundation class, which does not really give teachers tools and a clear understanding of what inclusion means. And I've done some search and realized that there's actually a lot of work that is being done at OSPI as well as WA around inclusion, and in fact there's a lot of training that is offered for districts that are participating in their inclusion practice, and as well as their free module and training modules that it's, I believe, open source that's there. Which kind of brought me to, is there something we can do as a board to help this move along so that the inclusion practice is more clean and thorough, and that all stakeholders, whether it's the staff, that they feel trained, that they feel like they're tooled, or parents who are sending their kids into those spaces feel like they are included and they're actually gaining things in those classroom space. If we could do more, and obviously as a board, we're in the policy space, and wonder whether we should be looking at policy or look at pre-existing policy to include something on the inclusion, because that's, to me, putting on my special ed hat, that would be the next space. How do we marry that general ed space and special ed space so that they're more fluid and more in partnership, and that the work that both sides are doing are lifting the student in the best capacity? And so I'd like to welcome, if conversation around that. What are your thoughts? Director Watson was there also regarding this meeting, and any thoughts on pushing whether it's a policy or a recommendation or around inclusion?
Yeah, I think your summary of the meeting is correct. I was at the meeting because I've been a member of that PTSA for pretty much since its inception. But I've often, wondered about, I think the training is, it's one class, right, for teacher training. I mean, having a husband who just went through it last year, I thought it was pretty thorough and everything. I'm not sure if it always was. So I've always wondered whether we could do like a just-in-time sheet almost, realizing that teachers have, so little time in their days. But if they just had like an understanding of the vocabulary and some of the different interventions that, just immediate might help.
I'm wondering if, I know that there's trainings available through WA and also through OSPI. And I often wonder when people look at these training, how do they look at it? I know that if it's marked special ed teachers go for it. I don't necessarily know that general ed teachers go for it. It's not marketed well. And so to encourage staff to consider, because it would be helpful, because I've heard this both as a parent and as a teacher and as an advocate, where they, from the staff side, where they don't feel comfortable, they don't feel well tooled to handle the situation that they are receiving.
I've heard a lot of things from students on the secondary level, and I can also imagine from a teacher's point of view, you have 150 students spread, if you had like 30 in a class and 5 classes, you can't read that many. I don't know what the number of kids that would have IEPs, but it's hard to just keep all that in your mind. But then there's also, I would think, legal considerations in being able to have it summarized and so forth for you. But I just wondered if there was a way we could make it easier on teachers and get better results.
Yeah, well, legally, all the teachers are mandated to read those. Yeah. From practical purposes, I think I was more looking at how do we tool our staff so they feel more confident, and therefore the students feel more confident in that space as well. And so is there a space, or is there a need for us to create a policy or inclusion in an existing policy to encourage that additional education through, whether it's PD Day or do we make it a mandate? I would rather not. I would like from my understanding, teachers would like to be asked, not forced. But there is definitely, we can't keep on saying we're going to do inclusion without tooling.
Without the tools, yeah.
I see comment from, or question or comment from Director Chu. I have one as well, but please go ahead.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm really excited about the idea of how we can better support inclusion from a policy level. I think one of the things that we intended when we did our 0130 policy on equity was that it was intended to look at a full set of things, from racial equity to equity of special needs versus, and a whole host of other things that are often marginalized or treated differently. And I think that there's so much need in all of that space that perhaps the one training on equity doesn't do enough to delve into the practices that are needed for inclusive practices with special education. And I think it would be interesting to see, like, do we build on that policy, or does this belong in the special education policies? And I think that what Director Watson said is a really nice kind of reminder of why we tie this back to the collaboration with the district staff in terms of how we would do it. And that is, you know, teachers only have so much bandwidth. And so the question is, what do they need? You know, some teachers would prefer that that's a training. Others might prefer a toolbox. There are many things, but I think what's worthy here is to say, we've been doing inclusion longer than a lot of school districts. We're somewhat cutting edge on it. I mean, like, maybe we don't have it all down, but we've been doing a lot of good things. And so we've learned a lot already, but we know we need and want to do more and do better. So we've got to figure out, if we've been doing it for this long and still have issues, what are those issues? What would help solve those? And so I think getting this on the policy radar and asking the district to come back with what would help really press this issue forward, where we would want to focus policy-wise and where we want to put a commitment in the sand kind of thing, would be super helpful. So I would just ask that we do pursue this in partnership with the staff who are supporting this work, and say, what do you need to take us to the next level on this?
Yeah, I think if we frame it, so my thought is this: I was going to ask, as you were speaking, Director Aris, kind of what would you write in the existing policy, or if you're writing a new one, and how do you think that will move the dial? Because I thought we already have maximizing student ability to participate in general education already in our special education procedure. And if it's not translating into the outcomes we want, which we clearly are seeing that, should we first be asking, is policy the thing that will make a difference? Or is there, for example, something that would require bargaining? Is there an implication on effects that would be relevant to negotiations we have? Meaning, where is the friction point that or the opportunity we would need to unlock? Because I would say that sometimes the temptation is to write in policy what we wish what would happen, but that's often not necessarily the solution. It may not be the core problem. I don't know the answer to that, but I just say it's a worthwhile initial question. But what I hear from what you've said and what others have said is there's a need, something needs to change. What I'm not sure is if the right, I'll call it instrument, is a policy change versus something in another arena. And so what I don't know is what's the first place to start. And perhaps, I don't know, Deputy Superintendent Collins, you're listening to this, does something strike you as well? But that's my question, or I guess rhetorical somewhat question. Should it be in policy? And is there already language that gives the district that, I would say, foundation? So they want to do it, they could do it, they should do it. Is writing more going to make the difference, or is there some other blocker? I guess I'm curious to know what the staff thinks. I see somebody. Yeah, love feedback from somebody.
I would point that policy, School Board Policy 2161, and then the corresponding procedure 2161P includes a statement that within the educational setting, a student should be placed wherever.
Sorry, one more time. Which policy?
Sorry, 2161 and 2161P, which is the special education policy and procedure, identifies that special education students should be in the school where they would attend if they were not disabled, and with non-disabled students in the general education setting to the maximum extent possible.
So I don't.
The following paragraph about special or separate classes that might speak to the issue of existing policy and procedure.
Yeah, that's not what I was referring to. It's very clear in our district, our students are when they are ready, they have access to general education space. The question is, are the teachers feel that they are well prepared to receive those students, and they feel that they have the best capacity tooled to support that student in that space. And what I'm hearing is that from the staff side, not always, from the parents' observation side, not always, and the students' side, not always. And it is not because there's no lack of desire, it is that they haven't had the opportunity to be really well tooled. There are courses, PDs for special ed teachers. Special ed teachers are trained in inclusion, but general ed teachers are not mandated to have those courses or those opportunities of learning in their training when they leave a university setting. And so given that, and that's the majority of our staff, and because we're also very short of special ed teachers, it may be time that we start looking at how do we best support our staff at large to make sure that they feel comfortable and tooled to do their portion as these students walk into their classroom.
So I think my only, I guess, connection between the two was to say, if we passed a policy tomorrow, does that obviate the need to have a negotiation on it? And I don't know the answer, but I think one does not lead to the outcome. I think there's no matter what, I think there's a negotiation that would have to happen.
Well, I'd like to start that conversation and see. Which one?
It's in that same procedure. It's
Oh, okay.
Very
Yeah.
lengthy. It's very
Okay.
lengthy, so it's toward the end. But I think it begins to get at it, but it's not specific enough to inclusion, maybe.
Okay, so it seems like there may be some nuance in there already in the 2161P, but it doesn't specifically call out inclusion. So maybe that's.
I know that Assistant Superintendent Thomas is out sick, but I would identify that the board, oh, wait, you said you were sick in your email. I missed you. The board could, at a policy level, if you're choosing to mandate a specific type of training, you can do that, but the impact of passing that policy would be one that would have to be bargained. And so that would be the caveat there, is that the board can certainly choose to pass a policy, but how that gets impacted would be something that would be subject to bargaining.
Is there a way we could have I guess I would love to see a survey of the staff, the teachers, as if, I know from sitting on the teacher side, I know that teachers do not like being told what they need to do or not when they already have mile high stuff of they need to train. And is there any way that we could have a conversation to see if this is a priority for now, or do we push it for a little bit later?
Is that in that policy proposal, you may have noticed that 2161 is actually in the plan to be looked at. It's not been reviewed for a long period of time. And in fact, a lot of our inclusion work has been post the last review of that policy. So I would just offer that up, that is something that is in the plan, so to speak, and that would be a policy that we would need a lot of stakeholder engagement in.
That's fantastic. Thank you.
If I could build on that, while we're still on the topic of things that went on at the special needs PTSA, there was one other thing that was mentioned, which was sometimes you get your kid is included in the classroom, they're there, but they're off on their own doing like a special project with an aide, or the worksheet that they're on isn't the same as everybody else's, or they're not included in the group. So they're sort of there, but they're not really there. And they have some ideas around, I guess the speaker, they had a special guest speaker, had some ideas around how that might change, but that would be another element to think about. And, based on the language of the policy that she just read, you wouldn't see that. That would be like a philosophical shift or something.
Yeah, so that's why I said the inclusion training would be a really good thing, because that's putting a child on an island, they're not really being included. They're in that space, but they're not engaged in what is happening in that class. And so that comes with a lack of really knowing how to bring that child into that space and be engaging in that content and have access to the content that is being offered versus being put in the back corner with an aide to do their own thing. That's not inclusion. That's being in the same space without access.
So, okay.
So that's why I said it would be good if there was something. But I see that we have that on the list, 2162. So 61. It would be great that if we could do.
An idea could be, I know, well, I mean, we had discussed when we talked about how would we kind of divide and conquer across policies. We can talk about this at our next board planning session, but we have time right now. It could be that if you and Directors Watson wanted to, reach out and work with or engage on some level with Executive Director Harrison, you could share some ideas after the two of you work together. That could be kind of an opportunity if you want it on that. I mean, it's a suggestion, it's an idea.
Yeah.
It's certainly not a direction.
I would love to participate in that.
That might be interesting. I'd like to also, study the policy a little more and get some more feedback from the parents, And
the question is, though, I do want to address what Director Chu said. Do we need to also include the term inclusion into the policy 0130, the equity policy?
Some of it is in there. We should take a look if you weren't looking.
I'm going to caution from the legal perspective as a special education attorney, the meaning of inclusion is not something that actually has ever been truly defined, and what is inclusion to one person can have very different meanings. So like, for example, is a co-taught class where you have a special education teacher and a general education teacher and the same number of students with and without disabilities considered inclusion? Depends on your definition of inclusion. So I would just be cautious that in the land of law, we have difficulty dealing with the phrase inclusion a lot. And that's why the focus is typically on maximizing ability to participate in general education settings.
Thank you for the clarification.
do we have time for a completely different topic for a minute?
We do. We have until 6:16. So I had one thing I was going to flag,
sure.
but you should go ahead.
Well, no, this is just really quick, but if I am a Bellevue School District director that happens to live in Redmond, because I live in that little piece, and I know that that's zoned for Bellevue schools, and I know we have Medina and Hunts Point and other people who aren't necessarily in the loop in Bellevue. So I found out that because it came to PTSA Council, that Bellevue City is doing a 2044 comprehensive plan, and they're doing a survey, and they want everybody's feedback, and they would like people to do this 5-minute survey online. It's on engagingbellevue.com, and I don't know when the closure date is, but I'm looking at it right now and it's still up. I filled it out, but it turns out they'll take it from people who live their lives in Bellevue, as I do. So if you work in Bellevue, you can also fill it out. So I just thought I'd point that out so we could weigh in on things that we think are important that might intersect with what we're doing in the schools for the Bellevue City plan. That's all.
Okay, I will just take 2 minutes to say a few things, which was, I guess, in the celebration joy category. It was really nice to be back in a school visit. I enjoyed the visit to Tillicum Middle School. I was really impressed with just thinking back, especially on the topic of, I think, special needs and inclusion, how much progress had been made, because I did recall one of the first things I saw in a public comment early when I first joined the board were some teachers who were coming not with joy, but with a lot of heartache and challenge. And it was early on when we had shifted to a inclusion model, but frankly, we weren't quite ready. And it was just really nice to, I think, hear from the students and teachers, and to see both principals and all the staff, and the classroom visits were really helpful. And thank you to Director Chu for having the idea of helping to stream that so our two directors online could watch. I thought it was just a really positive visit. So I just wanted to say that. That's really what I had. And I don't know if anyone has anything else. I do know there was a topic Director Chu wanted to talk about. So just want to be mindful. We've got about 7 minutes, and then we probably want to get ready for our community engagement session.
Mine doesn't
So-
have to happen tonight. And well, I have one that does, and that is if you are able to and interested, I'd love to encourage folks to attend the Bellevue Schools Foundation Spring for Schools Luncheon on Friday, May 13th, and you can still register. It is being held both virtually and at the Hyatt, and Bellevue Schools Foundation does a lot to help us support all of our students in all of our classrooms. And yeah, I encourage folks to check it out and so forth. So if you need more information, let me know, but I just wanted to call that out. And I'll cede my time to Director Shuey because I think it's a deep discussion and I think we can bring it up afterward.
Thanks. I'm good. I've contributed what I wanted to this evening. Thank you.
Well, I'll
Okay.
intro my topic
Yeah,
then
go
and
ahead,
just
go ahead.
say, not for a huge discussion, but just as we go through what it looks like to have these workflows that we're managing instead of committees, I think there are a bunch of logistics we should work out so that we have common expectations with staff. And are they coming back to the full board? Are they coming back to and collaborating and actually spending work time with the group who is supposed to do it? Are they just, did that person create it, but then staff just runs off with it? And like, what's the workflow? And that's one part of it. Another part that I hear as we come up with them is if we come up with too many, how do we make sure that that doesn't become a burden on staff? So, let's say that we look through the policy list and we start assigning pairs to different policies. Staff can't have a different pair of directors working on this policy and another one on this one, another one on this one, and that then becomes this huge management effort. So I'd just like us to think through when we're doing director work that I believe in the efficiency of it. I think it's really productive when two board directors dive in deep, work through some policy issues or work through some things that are board specific, give the board perspective, get that kind of going, prep things, and then come back to the board with a chance to give deep feedback and to be part of it. But we need to think there's work to be done. There's some opportunities there. That's all I would like to put on the table for a future discussion.
Yeah, I think it's a good discussion, and we could make sure we talk about that on the 16th, which is going to be a planning session, but it won't be one where we added one for the 9th, which is really just for us mainly talking to our search firm. I think I would say the main thing is it's going to vary, and like for the RFP and the search firm, that work stream, like Director Shuey and I think met once or twice, basically for an hour, and our engagement with staff was limited. So we kind of operated on we came up with an idea, and after that, every single thing we did, we brought in everybody. I think it's probably going to vary from time to time, but the general reason why we converted that Monday meeting like we did, so it's more tilted towards planning, is so that we could get some of that work time with all of us and have maybe less churn kind of back and forth. But I think it's a good question, and we should probably go through what's gone well, what's not gone well. I do know that was part of why, or I believe that was part of why the superintendent assigned Ms. McGee to help us so that she could be that sort of radar on, hey, this one seems heavy, let's do it this way, or this one seems lighter, or hey, you guys now have, to your point, 7 different policy things you're all going to plan to jam, and we're going to have to space these out. I think that was sort of the idea behind that. But I think as we move forward, we will we'll figure out who we will be working with, who will take on that role. And I think these are good things for us to maybe also think about between now and the 16th when we talk, because I think we can bring what worked, what didn't work, kind of in the spirit of, we had that Monday meeting. We tried it 5 times and we said, this is not working. And then we converted it. I think we can bring some of that learning.
Oh, and one other thing, unrelated or sort of related, but not really. There was an invitation sent to folks to say, does anyone have time or ability to and desire to attend a listening session with our student representative group? And I forget the date, but it was sent out. We'll have it resent. I'm going to go ahead and be there for that. No one else had responded that they would be able to, and that's fine. But if we have a second person who is interested and willing, we'll just put that back out there for you so that that you can attend. I'm so sorry, I just forget the date, but it's there, and we'll get that out to folks.
If you could resurface it, because I missed that somehow.
I'm sorry, can you say it again?
If you can resurface it, that would be great, because I missed that somehow.
Yeah, we're definitely going to resurface it. Yep, we'll send that out. I'll talk to Hannah or Melanie, and somebody will just resend it. I think Yasmina might have been the person who sent it, but I can't remember. So we'll find it and send it.
Was it sent as a calendar invite or as an actual email too?
Oh, no, it was just a mail that says if you're available let us know. Or you know what? It might have been in a more complex document. I think it was buried a little bit. Anyway, we'll get it surfaced. We'll get it sent out. We'll see who's available.
Thanks.
Okay, in the interest of having enough time to shift to our community forum tonight, it's 6:16, and I suggest we adjourn our meeting. If there's any final thoughts, just 15 seconds, share them, but I do want to make sure that we make tonight as successful as possible, and that probably means giving ourselves transition time. So if there's nothing on anyone's mind that they're in need to say right now, I would say we are at time, and it may be the right time to adjourn our meeting. Is there anybody? Okay, some of that is logistics, and I think if we are adjourned, we can get those. So, Director Shuey, do you have something that's urgent you want to share?
Just a logistics question too, just because we're going to switch over. We heard that there were 2 staff members for each. Will they be coming into the room a little early so that we can chat?
I think the answer is going to be yes. And I suggest we just call you directly or have someone call you directly so that you can ask all your specific questions, but we are able to shift to ensure that we're ready as people come. So with that, our meeting tonight is adjourned, and we look forward to our community forum. Thank you.